This is Lyric Lab Poetry, the Los Angeles edition. Well, in fact, almost all the videos are shot in Los Angeles, but I thought it might be interesting in this video to explore a day in the life of an LA-based poet, or rather this LA-based poet. I'm incredibly fortunate to live in this beautiful part of the world, something I never take for granted, and I'm not quite sure how this happened. I never worked a 40 to 60 hour working week doing something else. I have friends that did that. They have nicer cars, bigger houses, but frankly, I think they were robbed. I get to sit here day in and day out crafting poems, and that's essentially what's going on here. There's a lot of staring at screens, there's a lot of thinking, and a lot of looking out the window. Someone's about to walk past the open office door and say, "Hard at work again, Martin?" And the answer is yes, I am hard at work, because I've never found writing that has placed such demands on me. I've written and published articles and reviews and 4 non-fiction books, and that was simply a case of putting the structure in place and then getting started. I think because poetry is a heightened distillation of language, it demands so much more. It's more challenging and yet more rewarding. And what goes on here is twofold. There is the writing, there is the revising, the editing, the wanting to find out how a poem starts, how to fix a poem, and how to finish a poem. And then there is the other part, which is the business side of things. I'm currently contractually obligated. I have a book coming out in 2026, so I need to check in with those emails. There's also the subs file. And with a click of a button, you can see here how I track my submissions to literary magazines. You can see this is a simple Word document. At the top, I have the year, and then I break down the publisher, the date I send out work, a response when it comes in, and notes. And those notes are usually about how much it's cost me to send out those subs. You can see at the top here, I list the number of poems that the magazine requires, and then I list the names of the poems as well. I've also started numbering these submissions as well. I'm on 52. I plan to make 104 this year, so a modest 2 a week. That's up on last year, where I sent out about 90 submissions. It's something that I've fallen behind on, so I need to work harder to get those poems out. $3 or $25, sometimes $30 if you're sending out a full collection. It can be expensive sending out that work, so I work hard to make sure it's in the best shape possible. I use color highlighting here to basically indicate where I'm sending out a chapbook or a full collection, and I think this is pretty straightforward. And here in red when I receive a rejection, and on the rare occasion that I get an email response saying that the poem is being accepted, I highlight that in green. Always important to celebrate your victories. So that's my submissions file. Let me know in the comments below how you keep track of your own submissions, what you think might work well from this template, or what I could do to improve it. Would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Another thing I do is every year, at the end of the year, I have a breakdown. So here you can see my 2024 report. I made a submission of about 90 submissions. I placed 9 pieces. So that is a 10% strike rate. I'm really pleased about that. I know many writers would be pleased with that figure. 2 of the acceptances were the reviews of other writers' collections, and then there were 7 poems that I placed in literary magazines over the course of the year. It doesn't seem like a lot, but actually it really is. It feels like ample reward. Anyway, important to stay hydrated, of course. It's time to get back to the writing and the thinking, and it just requires so much attention. There also has to be time for a bit of reading, keeping up on contemporary poetry and poetics, something I find time for in my working day. And when I'm done with that, it's probably time to get outside and see a bit more of the neighborhood, because taking time away from the thing you're doing actually is productive. And I don't know how many times I've walked around this pathway in my neighborhood thinking and stopping to sit at the park bench and look out over the lake. I suppose this is the outdoor equivalent of sitting in the office, although this time I'm not thinking about the nuts and bolts of poetry. I'm not thinking about how to edit or revise, but I think I'm probably thinking in broader terms about what poetry means and how poetry does what it does. And what a beautiful setting in which to do that. As I said, I take my obligations very seriously because I feel that I'm very privileged to be in this position. So I've always had a very good disciplined approach to writing. I sit down at the same time every day and I write for several hours. And even when I had 25 hours in my working week doing a little bit of teaching in a college, I would do that in the morning, come home, have a nap, and then from about 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the afternoon, I would write. Okay, let's see what else is going on in the writer's day. I'm on my way to an in-person poetry workshop in Santa Monica. It's early evening, although it's still broad daylight out there. It won't be by the time I get down there. LA traffic sucking the way it sucks. But it's worth it. It's worth the journey down there because I come from a performance background, and as you probably know, theatre is a collaborative art form. It depends upon people coming together to make that art work. That's not the case with poetry, is it? It's a very solitary pursuit sometimes. So I get out for a couple of reasons. First of all, simply to connect with other writers, but also to receive really valuable input and feedback on the poem that I'm sharing. Just turn the corner here. And, you know, there's always going to be someone in the group that never gets what you're trying to say, but there will always be people who offer really valuable insights. And it could be something really simple. It could be a simple grammar error or something you've overlooked, or it could be more substantial than that. So I find it really useful, and I encourage other writers to take part in poetry workshops. I think also it helps the writer understand that your writing is always in flux. There's always room for improvement, and no one writes the genius draft on the first draft. So there we are. And after a very long drive, I've arrived in Santa Monica. You can see some of the old fellow curmudgeonly poets in the room. Not the most diverse of groups, but I find it very rewarding. 2 hours later, this light's going to go out very quickly. So brilliant workshop, really enjoyed it. Love offering critique on other people's work, trying to offer constructive feedback, and of course receiving it on my own work. And I've got lots of really useful notes to go away with now and reshape and rework and revise the poem that Now, before the lights really go out on this evening, it's time for a drop of the good stuff. I've always been partial to this very good single malt Scotch whisky, Laphroaig, and no, I'm not being sponsored to say this. I wish I were. In fact, Laphroaig, please do feel free to send me a case of the good stuff, which I really enjoy and really helps me to unwind after a long day. And writing under the influence, something I've never done. I just know the mental acuity and sharpness it requires from me with my head on straight. I'm not sure I'd ever achieve that any other way. Anyway, thanks for watching. As always, please do click on the like and subscribe buttons. I'll be back soon with more poetry content. It just remains for me to say cheers and good night. Thanks for watching.